So today's shir is being said for his chutz for Refuah Shlema for Sarah Rivka Bas Mindel, very, very, very special woman who is currently involved in a serious battle with a serious illness. And please God, this shir today will serve as a zechus for a Refuah Shlema, as I said, for Sarah Rivka Bas Mindel. We're going to be focusing today on Tehillim Perek test. Tehillim Perek test, if I had to give it a heading, so really I think we could title the Perek Evil and the Triumph over Evil. So the Perek begins, Tehillim Perek test, Lam Natseach Al Mus Laben Mizmor LeDavid. So it's a song by David HaMelech. Mizmor LeDavid, it's a song by David HaMelech, Al Mus Laben. Al Mus Laben is a very, very difficult line to translate. Al Mus Laben, what exactly does it mean? There are many, many different mefarshim that deal with this phrase, Al Mus Laben, which literally means on the death, Laben to the son. So some explain that it's referring to David's son, Avshalom. Rashi rejects that. Rashi actually says that Al Mus Laben means there was a general in the times of David HaMelech, and David HaMelech had an enemy. His name was Laben. So Lamatzeach Al Mus Laben, this one David is referring to David HaMelech's victory over Laben. His name was Laben. He was a terrible, terrible enemy of the Jewish people. He murdered many, 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 many Jews. And when David defeats him, so he sings this Perek to go ahead and praise Hashem for destroying Laben. The Rav Hirsch actually says a beautiful pshat, and he says Al Mus is really one word. Al Mus from the word Alma, which is a young girl, a young child. Al Mus Laben, he explains beautifully, is David HaMelech is singing about the immortality of the Jewish people. The Jewish people are considered young, forever young. They're always going to live. They live on for eternity. So Al Mus Laben means that David is singing Almus for the youth, for the immortality of the Jewish people. The truth is, perhaps Rashi's pshat and Rav Hirsch's pshat are really one and the same. When David HaMelech defeats our enemies, so that ensures the survival of the Jewish people. So David HaMelech is singing the praises of Hashem, singing for the fact that he defeats his enemies, but really we're singing about the immortality of the Jewish people. So if we continue now, Pasuk Beis goes on, Odeh Hashem b'chol libi, which means I thank Hashem b'chol libi, with all of my heart. Asapro kol niflosecha, I will tell over to Hashem kol niflosecha, all of Hashem's wonders. What does it mean, Odeh Hashem b'chol libi? So the Malvin has an amazing pshat here. The Malvin says what it means, Odeh Hashem b'chol libi, I thank Hashem with all my heart. So the Malvin explains that in life, whenever we thank Hashem, so we tend to thank Hashem, but we don't realize embedded in the thank you is, Hashem, this is awesome, but I wish I could have a little bit more. You know, thanks so much for the job, Hashem, but maybe I could have just a little bit more too. Odeh Hashem b'chol libi, what David HaMelech is saying, now that I've defeated my enemies, Odeh Hashem b'chol libi, I am completely thanking you, Hashem. There isn't a request embedded in my thank you, like very often we tend to do. If only I could have a little bit more. God, that was great, but maybe I could have a little bit more. It says the Malvim so beautifully, Odeh Hashem b'chol libi. You know what it means to thank Hashem b'chol libi, with all one's heart? It means that there isn't a request that's hidden really in the thank you. So Odeh Hashem b'chol libi, Asapra kol niflosecha, I will sing and I will proclaim to Hashem kol niflosecha, all of His wonders. Pasuk Gimel, Esmicha ve'elza vach. Says David HaMelech, I have simcha, I rejoice, Esmicha ve'elza vach, in you, Hashem. Azam shimcha elyon, I will sing to your name, elyon, which is on high. So, just an interesting observation on this pasuk is, Esmicha ve'elza vach. What does that mean, vach? In you, Hashem. So perhaps what David HaMelech is teaching us is that true simcha, true happiness is bach, is only when you connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara in Pesachim, very famous Gemara in Pesachim, teaches us that Ein hashchina shora lo mitoch atzvos, lo mitoch atzvos, lo mitoch tzchok. God's presence doesn't rest on a person if the person's lazy, if the person's sad, depressed, if the person's acting in an inappropriate manner. V'lo mitoch kalos rosh, he's lightheaded. V'lo mitoch dvar b'kelim, says the Gemara, elo mitoch dvar simcha shel mitzvah. How does a person really attain true happiness in this world? If there's simcha shel mitzvah. Esmicha ve'al tzavach. I've defeated my enemies, David HaMelech says. And now that I've defeated my enemies, I can focus and I can rejoice and I can have true simcha with you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Azam l'shimcha alyon, I will sing your song. I will sing your name, which is on high. I will sing to your name, which is on high. B'shuv oivai, the Perek continues, B'shuv oivai achor. When my enemies retreat, yikashlu, they will stumble. V'yovdu mipanecha, and they will be destroyed from before you, Hashem. Ki osisa mishpati v'dini. For you, Hashem, have executed mishpati, my judgment, v'dini, my causes. Yashavta likisei shofet tzecha. You, Hashem, you sat likisei on your throne, shofet tzedek, you are a righteous judge. You are going to punish the enemies. You have taken care of my mishpat, you have taken care of my din. Ga'arta goyim ibadat rasha, which means, Hashem, you destroyed the nations. Ibadat rasha. You have doomed those that are wicked. Shema machisa liolam va'ed. The names of the wicked, machisa, you have erased liolam va'ed forever. Ha'oyev, which means the enemy. So here the Mefarshim point out that David HaMelech is literally speaking to Amalek. Ha'oyev, referring to our arch nemesis, the enemy of the Jewish people. Ha'oyev, as if David HaMelech is addressing him. Ha'oyev, you the enemy, listen up. Tamu charavos lanetzach. Unbelievable. That which you have destroyed is gone forever. Ve'orim natashta, avad zichron hema. And those cities that you have uprooted, avad zichron hema. Their memory is lost forever. But don't think you got away with it, says David HaMelech. V'adoshem liolam yeshev. Hashem will forever be sitting, as you know, konein la mishpat kiso. He's constantly preparing his throne for judgment. V'hu, David HaMelech continues to Amalek. V'hu yishbo tevel b'tzedek. And we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, will certainly judge the world b'tzedek, with righteousness. Yodin le'umim b'mei sharim. He will judge the nations of the world b'mei sharim, with fairness. And at that time, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is punishing the wicked, v'hi Hashem niskav ladach. Says David HaMelech, Hashem will also be a support, ladach, for those that are downtrodden. Miskav li'itot batzara. Hashem will certainly support those that are in times of distress. V'yiftechu v'cha yodei shemecha, which means those that have trusted you, Hashem, those that know your name will certainly trust in you. Ki lo azavta dorshecha Hashem. For you, Hashem, will never ever abandon those that seek you out. Zamru la Hashem yoshev tzion. The Rishayim are destroyed. Hashem is remembering us. What's the natural reaction? Zamru la Hashem yoshev tzion. We will all sing praises to Hashem who sits Tzion in Yerushalayim. Hagidu va'amim alilosav. And we will tell the nations of the world all of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's wonderful deeds and attributes. Ki doreish damim, a very, very famous passage which we say, part of the Musaf service every Shabbos. Ki doreish damim osam zachor, which means, you, Hashem, are the avenger of Jewish blood. You are the avenger of Jewish blood. And you're going to take revenge for the Jewish blood. Osam zachor, you will remember all those that were killed. Lo shachach tza'akas anovim. You, Hashem, will not forget the cries of the anovim, of the humble Jews that were killed throughout Jewish history. And there's an amazing medrash on this pasuk. The medrash is brought down in the Yalkut, and the medrash says, listen to this, Ki doreish damim osam zachar, ki sheyavo HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'tvo odamo shel Rabbi Akiva. When Hashem will come and avenge the blood of Rabbi Akiva, the great Tana, who was brutally murdered by the Romans in a terrible, terrible way, ki sheyavo HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'tvo odamo shel Rabbi Akiva, hu tovei odamo shel Ben Kufya. The medrash says, not only will God take avenge the blood of Rabbi Akiva, but he'll also avenge the blood of Ben Kufya. Who's Ben Kufya? We don't know who Ben Kufya is. He was a Jew. He was a Jew who died a martyr's death. So it's not as if God only views the righteous, Rabbi Akiva, the Tanoim, the great tzaddikim of previous generations. It's not as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is only going to avenge the blood of the great tzaddikim from previous generations, but the simple Jew, the Jew that nobody knows, the Jew that died at the cross, right? The Jew that was burnt at the stake. So those Jews will go ahead and be avenged as well. Hashem will take care of them as well. Chanineni Hashem. So if you look at the word Chanineni, there are 3 nuns. Chanineni literally means have mercy on me, Hashem. You never find the word Chanineni with 3 nuns. So the Mefarshim here explained that David HaMelech is emphasizing Chanineni Hashem, have mercy on us, Hashem. Re'ei ani misonai. You have to see my afflictions from my enemies. Merolimi, David HaMelech says, lift me up, misha'arei maves. Lift me up from the gates of death. And what the Mefarshim say, what this means, is that at every moment in Jewish history, as soon as we finish one enemy, there's another enemy lurking. There's another enemy waiting to destroy us. We have very little time to catch our breath. Meromimi misharei mavis means lift me up from the precipice of death. There's always a threat. There's always somebody waiting to go ahead and destroy us. So we beg Hashem, have mercy. Why? Why do we want to deal with the enemies of the world? Why? Lamana sapro kol tilasecha b'sharei bas Zion, so that we could go ahead and sing your praises in Yerushalayim. Agila b'Yeshuasecha. All we want, Hashem, is to go ahead and rejoice in your salvation. Listen to this next part, unbelievable. Tavu goyim b'shachas asu. David HaMelech says, the nations of the world, our enemies, tavu goyim, they sank b'shachas asu, in their own pits. B'reshezu tamnu nilkada raglam, which means their feet became trapped in the very traps that they set for us. What is David HaMelech referring to? So very often, if you look at Jewish history, so the way we are saved is usually by the way upon which our enemies try to destroy us. Paro, for example. What did Paro do? Paro said, Kol haben hayilod hayiora tashlichu. Any male Jewish child born should be thrown into the Nile. Paro uses the Nile, he uses the water as a way to destroy the Jewish people. And ultimately, we know that it's the water that serves as the vehicle to destroy the Egyptians. So David HaMelech is singing the praises to Hashem. He's saying, unbelievably, Hashem, look how brilliant you are. In the very traps that they set for us, that ends up being their own traps. That ends up being their own demise. That's the way our enemies are destroyed. Noda Hashem. Hashem, you have become known, Mishpara Asah b'Falo Kapov, with the judgment that you have done with your own handiwork. No Keish Russia. The Russia was trapped in his own trappings. He got your own cellar. No one else says, think about this. Think about this. He got your own cellar. Think about this. Think about how Hashem traps the enemy in the very traps that they set for us. If you think about that, David HaMelech says, you'll appreciate Hashem's involvement in this world. Yashuvu Risha'im Lishe'ola, which means the Risha'im will return Lishe'ola. What does Lishe'ola mean? To their graves. To their graves. Now the truth is, in Judaism, in the Hebrew language, so whenever we want to say to somewhere, we say Li Mitzrayim. That's one way to say it. Or we could say Mitzrayimah. They went to Mitzrayim. Either the hey at the end signifies to a place, or Li Mitzrayim, to Mitzrayim. Here it's Lishe'ola. You have the Lamed at the beginning and you have the hey at the end. Which means the Rishayim are going Lishe'ola, to their graves. But you have this double to. So what's going on over here? So the Farshim explained beautifully as well. Lishe'ola means that the Rishayim are going to be destroyed not only in this world, not only physically, Lishe'ola, to their graves physically, but Lishe'ola, the hey at the end, refers even in the next world. The Rishayim have no chance in the next world. Those that persecute the Jewish people, they're not going to have any share, obviously, in the world to come. Yashuvu Rishayim Lishe'ola, they will be returning to their graves, as we said, the Rishayim. Kol Goyim Shechechei Elokim, all those nations that have forgotten Hashem throughout history, they will lose their share in the world to come. Kilo LaNetzach Yishkach Evyon, which means Hashem will not forever forget Evyon, which literally means the poor person, which refers to Klal Yisrael. Hashem will not forget us forever. Tikvas Anavim, Tikvas Aniyim Tovav Ha'ad. Nor will Hashem ever forget the hope of Klal Yisrael. And the hope of Klal Yisrael will never ever be destroyed. Kuma Hashem! So David HaMelech ends this Perek, get up Hashem, rise Hashem, Al Ya'oz Enosh. So beautiful. Al Ya'oz Enosh, Oz is strength. Al Ya'oz Enosh. Don't let our enemies, don't allow our enemies who are simply men, Enosh, they're men, they're nothing. Al Ya'oz Enosh, don't allow our enemies to feel invincible. Don't allow them to feel that they are invincible, that they are strong. Yishaftu goyim al panecha, let the nations of the world be judged before you. And finally, the last pasuk, Shisa Hashem, Mora lahem. Hashem, you should place upon them Mora lahem, mastery over them. You should be their master. You should be master. Place yourself over them. Yedu goyim, let them know about you. Eno shema sela, and let them realize that they're mere mortals, that they're mere men. They're nothing. They're men. And that's how David HaMelech concludes this Perek. And what's clear in this Perek is the idea that there's evil in this world, but ultimately, as we know, so the Jewish people will triumph over evil. We will prevail. And I want to close with one final thought. Many people throughout history, they wrestle with this idea of tzaddik v'ralo, rasha v'tovlo, which means you look around and righteous people seem to be suffering, and wicked people seem to be prospering. And this is a question that's been wrestled with and thought about and philosophized. People have been discussing this for eternity. And the truth is, this Perek assumes that there's Rishonim in this world, that are successful, that we need to go ahead, obviously, and overcome. But the question is why? How could it be that the Rishonim have success in this world? How could it be? So I once saw a beautiful shot from Rav Schwab, Zatzal. Schwab lived, and he was the Rav in Washington Heights. He died a few years back. And he said over an amazing idea. Pesach's coming pretty soon, 2 months. He said over an amazing idea. Listen carefully. At the Pesach Seder, we invite the 4 sons. At the Pesach Seder, we invite the 4 sons. One of the sons is the Tum. The Tum, we say, is the simple or the foolish son. What is the question that the Tum asks? So the Tum, that simple child, he asks, Mazos. What's going on? What is this? Mazos. What is this? So what's so bad about that question? Why is that a bad question? Not a bad question, but why do we call him now the simple child? What's so simple about that question? So Schwab said beautifully, you know what mazos means? What is this? You know what's so simple about that question? He said the following parable. Imagine a kid who went on an airplane for the first time in his life, and he had a special opportunity to go into the cockpit. And he goes inside the cockpit, and he's overwhelmed by all the buttons and the levers and the knobs and everything. And he's looking at it, he can't believe it. And he can't imagine how all these different buttons have a purpose. And after looking for a few moments, he turns to the pilot, and he points to one little button on the wall. And he says, Mazos, explain to me what exactly is this specific button. So the pilot is going to look at that child and say, you fool. As if you understand the whole picture. As if you understand all the different buttons and their functions. The Tam, the foolish child, you know what he asks? Mazos. Very, very specific. He looks at one little thing. Mazos, what is this? David HaMelech already addresses this question of tzaddik v'ralo, rasha v'tovlo, how the righteous Nebuch appear to sometimes suffer and the wicked are prospering. And David HaMelech, we say this every Shabbos. In Mizmor Shir L'Yom HaShabbos, what does David HaMelech say? Ish ba'ar lo yeda, a foolish person is uksil lo yavin ezos, the same word. The idiot, lo yavin ezos, doesn't understand zos. What's the zos? What's this? What's this one little idea? The next words, bifroach risha'im kamo Esav. The idiot, what does he do? He doesn't understand zos. This, the foolish one doesn't understand this. What's this? Bifroach risha'im kamo Esav. He doesn't understand why the wicked are sprouting like the grass. Why the wicked are prosperous. And he spends his whole life wondering, how can this be? Zos! But what is he like? He's like that child who goes into the cockpit and he looks and he just points to one button. He doesn't take into account the whole context. He looks at one little part and he says, I don't get this. How can it be that the Rishayim are prospering? How could it be? That's what David HaMelech says. That's a ksil. We have a very, very limited perspective. So for a person to just look at one prat, one point of this world and say, I don't get it. How come the Rishayim appear to be prospering? How come they appear to have successful lives? That is Zos. That is like a child who ignores, who doesn't appreciate that he's part of a big context. We don't understand. We don't understand the workings of Hashem. And to focus on one, that's a ksil. That's someone who's foolish. So even though the underlying assumption of the Perek is that the Rishayim do prosper, and they do succeed, but ultimately, as we know, we will prevail. So the Perek is giving us this incredible sense of emunah, that even though things sometimes seem difficult around us, we know that ultimately Hashem will go ahead and be that special support for us. Hashem will go ahead and destroy all our enemies, and at that time we'll all be zochet to come back to Yerushalayim and here Yemenu. Again, hopefully the learning will be a zechus for a refuah shlema for Sarah Rivka Basana.